Okay, she's saying we can start. All right, good afternoon or good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Melissa Rose Lafleur. Thank you for joining us. I am also an international medical graduate. I graduated from the Latin American School of Medicine in Cuba in 2009. Right now, we have 4 other panelists joining us. We have Dr. Anna Sophia Ore, Dr. Nicole Swiner, Dr. Annabelle Umeh, and Dr. Emmanuel Obi. So we will start with, are we starting? Oh, so we'll start with the panelists introducing ourselves. So since you're the first one that pops up, Dr. Orek, do you mind starting?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. Welcome, everyone. My name is Ana Sofia Ore. I am currently one of the chief general surgery residents at the BI Deaconess in Boston, one of the Harvard-affiliated hospitals. I am originally from Lima, Peru. That's where I grew up, and that's where I did medical school. And then after that, I was able to come here. I did a couple of years of research, and then very fortunate to match at BI for surgery. I am currently in fellowship applications, and so I'm going through the same ERAS process you guys are going to be going through soon, but for fellowship now, and then hoping to do fellowship in colorectal surgery next year.
Excellent, thank you. So Dr. Swiner.
Yes. Hey, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. I am Nicole Swiner. My experience is a little bit different, but I'll try to, give as much wisdom as I can. But I am not an international med or grad, but I trained and practiced with many at UNC Chapel Hill, where I did my residency in family medicine. Did undergrad at Duke University. That's where I know Dr. Cameron, who's behind the camera somewhere. But I am very, very happy to be with you all tonight, and I hope to give, whatever tips and tricks to getting this accomplished as much as possible. So here mostly just for motivation and encouragement, and keep you focused.
Okay, thank you for being here. Dr. Annabelle Umeh.
Hi, y'all. Really nice to meet you guys today. So my name's Annabelle Umeh. I'm actually Canadian, so I grew up, spent most of my life in Canada, did my undergrad there, and then I did medical school in Ireland. So I lived there for 4 years. I went into medical school knowing I wanted to do a psychiatry residency. So I'm currently a chief resident at University of Maryland Medical Center for Psychiatry. I'm in the process for applying for fellowship too. I'm applying for a consult fellowship. So I'm doing the interview process too again, and I hate it. But hopefully I'll be in a fellowship next year. But lovely to meet y'all.
All right, thank you so much. And Dr. Obi.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Emmanuel Obi. I'm a product of Ross University. Used to be in Dominican. I think now they're in Barbados. Did my residency training at UAMS Family Medicine in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Hospitalist, and I also do locums ER work, and currently hospital chief of staff at my location. So I'm glad to be here.
Thank you for being here. So we will take questions from the panelists. I don't see any, sorry, not from the panelists, but from the chat. I don't see any dropped here. Do the folks in attendance have any questions they want to drop? Okay, so I think what I'll do is there were some questions that were previously populated. So just give me 1 second to pull those up, and then we can kind of go through question by question and respond to those. So let me just pull that up 1 second. All right, so some of the previously submitted questions. The first one is, so this is for anyone who wants to answer. So standing out as an IMG, how suggestions for preparing a holistic application. Anyone want to speak on preparing a holistic application as an IMG?
I can take that one.
Okay.
Well, that's a great question. I think that the way to stand out is to basically just share your story. I think that I did that. I try to be as honest as possible of like what the journey was and what got me to this point, and all the steps, hurdles, falls, and everything that I was able or that I was trying to do to get to that point. Holistic application, I think that it's a balance of like, if you have research experience, if you have volunteering experience, this year, like I mentioned, because I'm applying a fellowship, now I'm able to see what ERAS looks like and how you need to choose 10 experiences and you have to highlight 3. And so I think that now it's more of a strategy of try to get a little bit of everything. Like, I don't think it's no longer you can share 10 research experiences or like 10 volunteering experiences, but find that balance between what research experiences are impactful, what volunteering, what work experiences are impactful, and just try to share your story within those 10 experiences. And then out of those 10, try to figure out which ones are you more proud of, or which ones are the ones that are going to show who you really are. And then try to put those as your top 3 most impactful experiences, because those are the ones that are going to definitely get, read the most. And those are the ones that people are definitely going to bring up in your interviews.
Can I ask a question actually? So it sounds like, are these 10 questions in place of the personal statement now, or is it in addition to?
So it's in addition. So the way when you submit instead of when you submit your CV, like the ERAS pre-formatted CV, it only allows you to share up to 10 experiences. And so those experiences have different categories. It can be a research experience, a volunteer experience, a work experience, and you can give a little bit, I think it's like 150 or 200 character description of what the experience was. And then it makes you choose 3. And then create your top 3 of most impactful experiences. And those go in a little separate area.
Okay. Do we have any questions or any other comments from the guests or the participants around that question?
This is Dr. Obi. I believe ERAS also allows you to upload a CV. This is another way to tuck in more of those experiences and go beyond that 10. It's which is, it doesn't make sense because ERAS, the application itself, is basically built like a CV once you print it out, but they do allow you the option to also upload a CV. At least it was when I was going in 2017 match cycle.
I think it's something that I want to add too, and I guess like I don't know much about like the new system, but when I'm thinking about applying and like making a holistic application, like obviously like you have your research experiences and like your elective experiences, you want to talk about those on your CV, but I also talked a lot about like non-medicine related groups. I was part of like cultural organizations, things like that, because it was something I could talk about a lot on my interviews and how that was important to me and how it reflected on me as a person. So I think like also making sure like, yes, put your research and like all your medicine related things in there, but like a lot of the stuff you do unrelated to medicine also make you a good applicant too.
Definitely, in my experience, things that make you memorable are the things that you want to lead with, right? Because of course, you know that there's hundreds, if not thousands, of applications coming into the same place. A few hundred get picked, and so there's got to be something other than your scores and all of the mundane things that really allow you to stick in the minds of the people who are either interviewing you or deciding to interview you. Okay, we do have some questions now from the participants. So I have, so it says, my question is for Dr. Umeh. I'm a non-US med student who is attending to do a psychiatry residency. I would love to have some tips for a non-US IMG who wishes to go the same road. So any tips on your pathway and your journey, Dr. Umeh?
Sure. I think when I was actually thinking about this before, when I, especially as a non-US IMG, like trying to find programs that would take me, I went on Residency Explorer and I like filtered the programs by which ones would accept like a J1 visa or an H1B visa. And then I literally went through every single program and saw if they took an IMG in the past like 5 years. And if they did, I applied to the program. And I also took off things off my list where I was like, I don't want to live in this place. Like, I'd rather like not do that. And I would take those things off my list too. I think another thing about the psychiatry application, kind of similar to what Dr. Rose was talking about, was you want to be able to put something on your application that will be memorable. Psychiatrists, I think that on my interviews, they cared less about my research experiences or my scores or what I did. By the time I was getting the interview, like I was talking about like my hobbies, like the different cultural groups I was a part of. Like I built my personal statement talking about how I crochet. So like that came up a lot on the interview trail too. So I think that the personal statement and all the other things you do, like make sure they really get a sense of who you are. If they're getting you if you have an interview, they already kind of want you. So like at that point, they just want to make sure you fit with the program.
Very good advice. Anyone else want to chime in on that one?
Yeah, I'll kind of piggyback on that. You know, in terms of the way that the application process has changed, you know, like I'm an old head, I think. You know, I applied way back in like the early 2000s, so I won't be able to give a lot of advice on the actual application process, but when it comes to the interview, you are your own best salesperson and you're selling your personality and you're standing out from the scores and the essays and the CVs, and you're showing people who you are and what you love about wanting to take care of people. And so I love what the doctor just said about talking about crocheting and her hobbies and her cultural experiences and the organizations that you're part of. After all that, when you get in front of them, you're selling yourself and your own personality. So talk about what it was like to grow up where you grew up and the upbringing that you had. I think people would really be drawn to that.
I think also, you know, very much along the same lines, when you're interviewing, people are trying to get a sense, even if it's not conscious, they're trying to get a sense of what is this person like that's going to be spending all day long with me, right? So if you're someone who who makes people laugh or has this, you know, a personality that's attractive, or there's something about you that makes them feel, you know, good. It's something that they're going to remember. And so similar, when I work with patients, especially when they're extremely nervous, I remember that my role is to make them feel comfortable. And so you want to feel so comfortable, or at least exude that you feel so comfortable that you make others around you feel comfortable. I think most of us have a little bit of social anxiety. And so you're going to be either inciting it or easing it with anybody that you meet. So it's a good chance to you know, it's something to keep in mind, is that you want to control the environment in a positive way.
I want to add one more thing too. I think another thing when you're applying as like an IMG is that I think there's like this belief that like we are bad applicants because we are IMGs. But I think sometimes it can be a strength in some ways, because like you have a unique experience going to medical school that other people from US medical schools may not have. So like I talked a lot about how like in Ireland, the medical system is different, and like what are the things I learned from the medical system there that I could apply here, and how it like built up certain things that I may not have experienced going to medical school in Canada or in the US. So I think it can, like when I was applying, I was like, oh, like this is my biggest weakness, it sucks. But I think that there is like some strength that you can pull out of that too, because it is a strength in some ways.
Okay. All right, so there's a Q&A section. So we have, as an IMG med grad, there is a concern that itself is, okay, I think you kind of just spoke to that being an IMG is a red flag in and of itself. So how does one write a personal statement? I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question. How does one write a personal statement to show another red flag, like not passing a step? So I think what I'm getting from the question is that being an IMG and not passing a step, how would you frame that, or how would you get around those challenges?
So there's this idea that IMG is considered a red flag, but I am one of those that push back and challenge that worldview strongly, because a lot of the programs you'll go into today, in fact, I can't name one, there's not one medical health system in America that doesn't have either a program director, assistant program director, associate program directors, or even preceptors that you're going to round with throughout your medical training, from medical school to residency to fellowship, that is not an IMG. It does not exist. You know, it's almost like the whole MDDO fight that used to be a knuckle drag fight. It's so useless when I guess what I'm trying to say is, do not come into this with that mindset. You have to throw that out the window. It really doesn't exist. Are there programs that generally don't accept IMGs? They exist. I'm not going to lie to you. But when you look at their faculty listing, a lot of them are, sometimes even 100% are all IMGs. So there are programs that build this culture that still maintain that archaic point of view. Once you look at them, look at all you have to do is open their residency profile page, and you'll tell whether or not they're IMG friendly. If they're not, just move past them, go for another one. And I won't lie, you may be that one IMG that may be their first IMG resident that they'll ever get. And that changes the whole culture of that organization. So the best thing I can advise anyone listening is throw away the idea that IMG is considered a red flag. It's not. It's a matter of cultural changes. Some cultures don't know whether or not they even have the energy and time to go into working on acquiring and maintaining a J1 visa for their candidates. That's some of the reasons why those programs don't do it. Where I graduated is very IMG friendly where I did my residency training. But I'll tell you the truth. If you were not a US citizen or green card holder, they did not bother interviewing you. Now, if you look at ACGME rules, that's actually against the rules, but that is the rules they played with. So every institution is different. You just got to find, you can just literally see what rules they're playing with just by looking on their website, looking at their residents, where they're graduating from. Dr. Umeh mentioned this. And for me, I went back 4 years. Where has a Ross student matched that wanted to go into this specialty? Because Ross prints out a list every year, all our residents, we had 100 and so, 200 and so match into this specialty, this location. That's what I looked at. And if I had a friend in the program, I phoned a friend and said, hey, I'm applying to your program. Do you mind doing this? Sometimes I did it to people I didn't even like. People will make you false promises. Some people would actually push your application towards a program coordinator. And honestly, it's not program directors. Your program coordinators are your biggest, they run the whole program. A program director has too many things in their purview. The person who actually makes sure your application gets in front of someone to review is the program coordinator. That's who you need to be friendly with or know somebody that knows. In my program, I used to walk people's application. Hey, I got these 5 people. They're great people. Oh, well, thank you, Dr. Obi. We'll review them. Maybe not all 5 will get an interview, but a good majority of them got an interview. And that's one of the ways a lot of your attendings, a lot of your residents currently right now that graduated from the school you're graduating from, and people that you know, that's some of the ways they can help you get your application outside of the whole ERAS. I call it automatic shredder, because they do put in these rules that if you failed step 1 3 times, automatic do not interview. Your application just goes to the trash, you know? But have I seen people who've had those issues still get an interview in programs that there was no way they should have? The answer is yes. And how did that happen? Somebody that knew them said, I know XYZ, Dr. So-and-so would be a great addition to our program. Do you mind reviewing their stuff? And they got reviewed. I got one girl to match in a soap program simply by telling my residency. I text them during soap cycle, hey, congratulations, I heard you guys matched 100%. Like, oh, we didn't match. We're looking for somebody for a rural program. I'm like, well, I got somebody. By Thursday, they sent me a text, oh, congratulations. Thank you for sending us a great candidate. I don't know what that meant. She found out hours later that she matched. And that's how she got into the program she's in today. And she's doing great. So first things, don't think of IMG as a red flag, because some of the people that will help you bypass those huddles that ERAS sets in place and programs set in place is program coordinators and people who graduated from your programs who are, guess what? IMG. Now, if you have failed an exam, you should know how to explain why you think you failed that exam. And I will be honest with you, I did. I actually did fail my CK the first time. I did. I had to repeat it. Everything else, I passed step 1, failed CK the first time, passed it the second time. I was able to say that I didn't study very well. You can make that argument. Somebody will listen to that argument because guess what? The people who are reviewing these applications, some of them have failed at other things in their life and they know people fail step exams. Before it used to be CS. A lot of the international medical graduates used to have a lot of problems with CS, but guess what? CS doesn't even exist anymore. There's something CS light that IMGs have to go through today, but for the most part, US medical students are not dealing with CS anymore. So there's always a way around these problems. And the way I found is to be earnest, say, I didn't study very well, and this is the steps that I've taken to change that process. And I took the exam again and I passed it. Find an eloquent way of saying that, and you'll never have to answer that question. You'll answer it in an interview, obviously. Oh, I see you failed this exam. Well, tell me what happened. Tell them the same thing. I didn't study very well, or XYZ was going on. However, I took some time out. I organized myself. I did some, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to say. I'm not going to tell you. Everybody has a million different things. Some people have family problems. Some of my colleagues, they were pregnant at the time. Others were getting married. There's always something that's going on in our lives aside from medicine. Medicine is just a small subset of your life. And as long as you're able to tell that story that weaves in, I had a human experience. It cost me this exam. However, I rallied and this is my score. That is what shows resilience. And that's what a program is looking for. Like, this is somebody who went through a hard time. And this is how they were able to overcome it. This is somebody we want in our program. Somebody else mentioned it here. If I'm interviewing you or when I'm reviewing your application, the question in my mind is, can I stand to work for the next 3 or 4 years with this individual? That's the question. If the answer is yes, you're great. If the answer is no, then I'll just say do not rank.
Very sound advice. Thank you, Dr. Umeh.
Amazing. Could I ask 2 quick things to kind of piggyback? That's amazing, Dr. Umeh. Number 1, so I'm really surprised to hear that applying as an IMG is still kind of a taboo red flag thing. You know, again, back in the early 2000s, 2007, when I was in residency and graduating, I felt like the tides were turning. We had at least 2, if not 3 international grads in our residency class, and they were phenomenal. I mean, you couldn't tell the difference. As a matter of fact, they, had more experience than we did coming in to treat patients. And so I felt like that was the time that things were really changing. And from then on, I've encouraged students that have come after me to look into applying, or to, look into applying to train internationally. So is that still the case? Is there still kind of that taboo associated with being an IMG at this point?
The answer is both yes and no. And the yes, because some institutions have this cultural mindset they're trying to maintain. And a lot of those programs, when you look at those programs, I hate to say this, there is almost zero diversity when you're looking at their the pictures of their residents as graduated. You can tell that there's a lack of diversity in a lot of those programs anyway. That's been my personal experience.
Yeah,
so take that with a grain of salt, but that's my personal experience. But for the most part, every medical system you can think of in these United States, even when you look at their C-suites, there is almost always an international graduate in there at some level. So the person who's going to be training you when you're in residency, one of your preceptors, your associate directors, your program directors, your faculty members, somebody's an IMG. And in some programs, 100% of them are IMGs. However, but if you're 100% IMG program, but you're in a program that has built this culture of no IMG, sometimes their hands are tied. Sometimes their hands are tied. And it doesn't mean they don't want to make a change. It's just that change may take a while to get there. But if you're going into this looking at yourself or approaching this journey or this battle with with the idea that IMG is a red flag already, you're already setting yourself back, because now instead of showing why you belong in that program, why they should hire you, it's almost like you're begging them. And you don't want to come from that position. Yes, you do want to get into residency, but you don't want it to, I guess you don't want to diminish your own shine. You don't want to diminish all the accomplishments you've made. I'm sorry to say this, medical school is not easy. And some IMGs have already done medical school in another country, decided to come and do a medical school all over again just to get a shot at this dream. So you don't want to diminish your accomplishments by having that red flag hanging over your neck, because it's not. If you find a program that's not IMG friendly, leave it alone, because there's hundreds of other ones that are IMG friendly. There's hundreds of other ones that have admitted somebody from, in fact, sometimes it's one school that nobody ever heard of, but guess what? It's an IMG school. But
So
nobody ever heard of it. Does it
so
matter? No.
So, Dr. Obi, we do have multiple other questions, so I wanted to give some space for those, if you wouldn't mind. But thank you for your passion. I wanted to just mention, there was a question about states that were more IMG friendly than others. I can tell you the ones I know, which is going to be New York, New Jersey, California for sure. I'm sure that there's others, other people can chime in, but that was one of the questions. And then I just wanted to share that the residency program I went to, Wyckoff Heights Medical Center in Brooklyn, 100% IMGs. So just so you know. Okay. Anyone else want to share states that they know of that are especially IMG friendly? Because those are the three that come to mind for me.
A lot of the Northeast states.
Yeah, I would say that too. And then New York is a good place to start because there is such a high concentration of residency programs all in one place, and they do tend to be extremely IMG friendly. And as Dr. Obi was mentioning, the best way to get out of the automation of the process is word of mouth, talking to people, looking up where your classmates went to, and working your way through word of mouth, because what the best thing to do is to get yourself out of that automated system. So we're going to pass on to the next question. I do have a question here about advice regarding the couples match. I've heard that programs don't like it generally. Any thoughts about the couples match? You might know about that? Okay. I don't know about it either. I think it depends on the program. What I know about the couples match, or previously, I do believe that some of them had one part of the couple go 1 year, the next year, and so it was staggered. And so that's one variation of that. I'm not sure if there are others. The places that offered that, they offered it because they didn't mind it, because they didn't have any problem with it, and they wanted to make that possibility available to young couples who are trying to start a family while doing residency. So if it exists, then it's most likely because it exists because it's well favored, is what I would say with the little that I do know. So the next question is, all right, so this says, I'm an international medical graduate from Mexico. I have questions regarding the personal statement. I'm a bit confused on how to do a strong personal statement. Should we mention that we are IMGs and what we went through in medical school in our countries, or why we want to do residency in the US?
The best way I can answer this is, if you went to medical school in another country and you're trying to do residency in the US, or sometimes people ask, why aren't you doing residency in your country of origin? The best way I can answer that question is, do not diminish the medical system of the country of origin, in this case, Mexico. I'm Nigerian, and I've had a lot of friends who went to school in Nigeria, try to get into residency in the US. The advice I give them is the same one I'm going to give you. Do not try to tarnish or diminish the medical system of the place you're coming from, because in my view, if this is how you're going to talk about them, what are you going to say about me when you graduate from this program? That's how I approach that. You can say it's clearly the easiest answer is that there's more opportunities afforded to you here in the United States, and nobody will fault you for that, because it's true. So you can use that as part of your answer, but do not diminish your program. I'm complete.
Very good advice. Anyone else want to jump in on that one? Okay. Next question is, do residency programs assist with the application for J1 or H1B visas? And has anyone experienced having to return home after residency for 2 years on a J1?
I can answer that question. My brother actually just went, my brother's also Canadian. He's also an IMG, and he just took a job in Delaware. So normally the program, if they're saying they accept J1 visas, like the graduate medical office, they're the ones who like handle all the visa related stuff, and they tend to do that very early because they want you to work. They took you, they want to make sure you get to work on your first day. But there is something you can do if you come here on a J1 waiver. I'm sorry, a J1 visa. You can do what they call a J1 waiver program. So what you do is you work in like an underserved area for 3 years, and then that puts you on the path to get an H1B and then eventually get a green card after you're here for a while. So like you don't have to do that returning back to your home for 2 years. So my brother, he just signed on for a 3-year contract in Delaware, and I intend to do the same thing and stay here as well. So there's a way around it. I think that the concern me and my brother had was that the J1 waiver jobs are technically underserved areas, but you can be in an urban underserved area. So like New York City would count as a place. Like I'm in Baltimore, and Baltimore counts as a place too. So it doesn't mean you have to go to like a flyover state or something like that. Like you could be comfy, but you just have to commit to working at that job for 3 years.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Dr. Umeh. I'm actually in beautiful, sunny Tampa, Florida, and I work at a clinic that is considered an area of clinical or critical need. And so that would be one of those places that, you know, would qualify for that type of 3-year work here in Tampa.
The
Okay.
only thing I wanted to add for that part is that if you're thinking or your program offers an H1B visa, you have to make sure that you have step 3 ready with a score in order to be able to process the visa. And so if that's something that you find out or you're interested in and you think that you're going to match or you match at a program that offers H1B, that is one of the most important things to get ready right away before you start processing your visa.
Okay. I do have a question directly for you, Dr. Ana Sofia. If you're reading an application for a surgery application, how would you or did you frame your research experience into an attractive experience?
Yes, I think honestly, I think that the best way of doing that is trying to transmit like the passion that you had for that research experience. I am a firm believer, and I know that it's really hard when you look at, you know, the NRP reports of how many publications and things you have to match these days for surgical specialties. But I do think that in my eyes, you do research because you like it and you're passionate about it. And so I think that as long as you're able to describe why you're doing it and why was it impactful for you, I think that that should help your application. I know it's tricky. I was actually just looking at the report that came up this week. I don't know if you guys saw that. It was like trending topic on Twitter of like, you need like 35, like the average publications to matching neurosurgery was like 35 publications during medical school. And that was for US grads. And so it's hard. And so it's hard to tell people to only do research if they're passionate about it, when you're seeing that to match, you need to have that research experience. And I think that for surgical specialties, you have to have the research experience. If you're going to do research, try to find something that passions you. Like, don't do research just because of the numbers. Try to find an area that you're actually passionate about, that you want to carry forward in your future. There's so many ways of doing research. It doesn't have to be all, large databases or like systematic reviews. You can do qualitative research. You can find something that you want to change and be passionate about it. And I would say that that's the number one thing for me when I'm reading an application now and I'm reviewing it. It's like, okay, great. You did this research project or you worked in this research lab, but what did you really do there? Like, what was your intervention? It's no longer what the publication is or the name or the journal, but also what your involvement with the project was.
So I want to piggyback on that. So passion is everything. Passion is what speaks. Passion is what people remember, and passion is uncommon. So, even so, if you're at this point where you're applying, you've probably already done your research. If it wasn't something you were super passionate about, make it something you were super passionate about. So go back, take a look, see what in there can you express some passion. Because as this question asks, how do you frame it into an attractive experience? It's something that you can express your passion about. That will help. Okay. All right, so I have a next one. What is a good, safe way to find out about malignant programs? I haven't heard that term before, especially those that accept IMGs and treat them badly.
I think Dr. Obi made a good point earlier about asking your friends, so if you happen to know folks or are familiar with folks or have previous graduates of your school that are at these programs, ask, how is it? Does it suck? Like, do you like it? Why don't you like it? That would be the first thing I would think of. The second thing that I was thinking of is are AIs still a thing? I know I sound old, right? Acting internships, are those still a thing?
Never heard of that.
Yeah, acting in
In
AI.
some
Yeah,
locations, like they call it sub-I now.
sub-I. Yeah, so sub-I is when, so I knew I was really interested in going to UNC and Duke. Those are like my big two for residency. And so I spent a month rotation away, spending time on that with that program. And so that was a great way to learn about what was really happening on the inside. Do the people like working with one another? How are the work hours, et cetera? And it was also a great way to stand out. I think another question in here is how to stand out in rotations. Doing a sub-I or an AI was a wonderful way to get in front of, it was a month-long interview. People got to know what your personality was and what it was to work with you. And that's another way to figure out what's really going on the inside. Will I like it here?
I would just add, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go first. Go.
I would just add a couple of things. I would say there's also like online, like there's actual like ACGME data that can tell you programs that are on probation and what their violations are. And so if you have any doubt or somebody, you heard a rumor that this program has duty hour violations or like they're on probation for some reason, you can actually look that up and you can find why. And the other thing I was going to mention, and I think this is the opposite of actually finding out which one's malignant, is don't believe everything you see online. You're going to find multiple Reddit posts, Google forms, spreadsheets that say many, many things about the programs, and that is not always true. And so I think that knowing somebody there, trying to find out now in the era of Twitter and Instagram and all these places, it takes 1 second to just you can try to DM a resident there, try to get their opinion, but I wouldn't believe everything you read out there.
And to add to that too, I think most programs offer like happy hours or times to like meet with the residents. And you can, I remember when I was interviewing, you can tell when the residents are burnt out or they don't like each other. It can be pretty apparent, watching their dynamics and asking them the harder questions, tell me one deficiency in your program. Are there any changes in the past couple of years? Are resident concerns actually heard, and are any of the changes that are made in the program resident led? Is it because the residents gave feedback and something happened? Another red flag would be if the program doesn't eagerly try to have you meet the residents or talk to the residents, it's probably because they're so burnt out that they can't talk to you, and that's a red flag.
I think that's excellent feedback. And that's true whether it's with this interview or any others. When you're out looking for a job, same thing. If you are not being introduced to the other physicians or the other staff members, there's absolutely a reason why. I also would add, because this is 3 extremely important years of your life, and you need for them to be successful, you do need to be as selective about the program you select as the programs are going to be about you. You want to make sure that not only you get in, but you stay in and you get out. So trust your intuition. If you are getting red flags, if you are twitching during the interview, if there's something wrong, it's because there's something wrong. Any other, so I don't have any other super specific questions or more specific than we've gotten. I think I just have one more. And it says, so I'm an IMG who just graduated from a medical facility in Africa. I do wish to do a surgical specialty, neurosurgery, ortho, general surgery in the US. I wanted to know what would be the best pathway for me or the different steps I need to have in mind in order to be successful throughout the way. I'm wondering if this is a question more of like the pathway into a surgical subspecialty, which is sometimes not very well understood. So of course, Dr. Ore can take that one.
Yeah, no, happy to. I always like to say that there's not one way. I can share what I think, works. I've seen people do it very different ways, depending on how you feel and what your interests are. I do think that for surgical specialties, if you're able to do sub-Is while you're in medical school, because I know that once you graduate from as an IMG, you can't, and it's only observerships, those sub-Is become extremely valuable when applying to surgical specialties. They want to see how you do, they want to see you practice, and they want to make sure that when you get to the program, it's not going to be such an uphill battle for you, and that you're going to be able to adapt, and that you're going to be able to work with everybody, and it's not going to be such a struggle. And so I do think that sub-Is, if possible, when you're in medical school, if you can still do them, is super helpful. Once you graduate, observerships are not ideal. It's very frustrating, especially if you like to operate and do things, to just watch and not be able to actually do anything. But it's a great way of like knowing the faculty, learning the program, becoming friends with the residents. And then I think with that comes along having and finding research opportunities. I think that I remember when I was initially trying to find research opportunities, it was just like emailing millions and millions of people, like looking at the research, sending emails saying that I was interested in what they were doing, that I wanted to work with them if they had any opportunities or like funding for a fellow, and then try to find, I do think that there is some strategy into, if you go to a place where they start getting to know you, you do research with them, and they start learning who you are as a person, then they see that you academically are accomplished. You work with them. There is this trust that you build with them that eventually opens the doors to certain subspecialties or surgical subspecialties. And I think that was my opinion, for example, of like what happened to me. Like I moved to Boston for research, and I did 2 years of research. And as part of that research, I met my surgical mentors, who happened to be the surgeons that worked at the program that I matched. And it's because they knew me and they saw me in the weekly academic activities, and they saw the passion and they saw me there, that they were able to open that door for me. So I do think that is usually I would say that the best way of getting your name out there, especially for those very complex surgical subspecialties.
So exposure is extremely, extremely important. So if you make yourself visible, or sometimes even a little bit annoying, that can help too. But if there's any way that you can do that, you can do those sub-Is or observerships, whatever it may be. Some exposure is better than no exposure. The more familiarity brings comfort, and they're wanting to bring someone on board that they know is going to be a good fit. So if you've made it clear that you're that already, it's going to be much, much easier. Okay, I have a good question here. So it says how to stand out in rotations to get strong LORs. It says as an IMG, but we're going to erase that part. We're going to say strong LORs. How do you stand out in your rotations?
It's simple. Be yourself. Well, no, be your professional self. Because there's two faces. I'm sorry. Be your best professional self. And just be authentic. People can tell when you are just clamoring just to get an LOR and you don't care for the specialty, versus when you actually show up and you want to be a part of the team. I'll give you an example. Family medicine trained. Where I was training, there was no OB program, but I like being in the OR. I scrubbed in almost every case I could, every chance I did when I was doing that rotation OB-GYN. And towards the end of it, I didn't ask, but I was being offered, hey, if you look like you really like this, You look like you're really enjoying yourself. Have you considered maybe doing an OB fellowship and from family medicine switching completely to OB? I told him no, but I was offered LORs. So if you be yourself, you show up and you are present, that's when you have those opportunities. I'll give you an example. Whenever I'm working with medical students, and this would also apply to you when you get into residency. And why I say be yourself and show up. I am not going to pick up the phone to call you to tell you, oh, I have X, Y, and Z procedure coming up. Do you want to observe? Do you want to see it? The people I take an interest in are the people who are already present and waiting for something to happen. If you're there, when I was in residency, I had a call room. I didn't hang out in my call room. I hung out in the ER doc box. When the codes came in, I was standing next to him. I remember one time rushing up to go do CPR. The ER physician just grabbed me on my white coat, snatched me back. I'm like, what's going on here? He's like, that's not your job. I'm looking at him, he's like, your job is to run the code. I didn't know that. I thought I wanted to help, but I had to understand how to run a code. And I'm bringing up this story to tell you, you need to be available. Nobody's going to pick up the phone in the middle of an emergency to call you, Dr. So-and-so. Oh, by the way, do you mind coming here? But if you were available, then you get those opportunities. Today, I do ER medicine on the side as a locums physician. I didn't do the ER fellowship training, but if I wanted to, I had that opportunity. I had people offering to write me letters, but I was already doing the job since my second year in residency. As a locums physician, there wasn't a lot of things different. All the procedures you needed to learn, I was already doing them because I was available for someone to teach me. And that's goes back to what Dr. Ori is saying. If you show up to these things and people recognize you, when it's time to put in those applications, they're not even going to think twice about giving you the nod and saying, we're interviewing this candidate and we need to rank this candidate to match. I'm complete.
We have one more question, which is, what does accreditation status, continued accreditation with warning mean? So people are kind of concerned about accreditation. If a program is going to lose it, what does that mean to your professional process? Anybody?
I can't really answer that question very well, but I will say this. It takes a mounting to even gain an accreditation process for some of these programs. And it's one of those things that once you're hired, it's almost impossible. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's very hard to fire you, meaning it's hard for a program to lose accreditation. Now, they can be flagged multiple times, and people see this all the time. That's why quote unquote, malignant programs exist. Because it's hard to just dismantle that program if you know the amount of work that goes into even putting the program up in the first place.
I agree with that. I was at a program that was always at risk for one reason or another, but they have never and will never close. So I agree with that. So I'm not seeing any more very specific questions here. Does anyone have any final words of encouragement? I am seeing a lot of commentary about how therapeutic and soothing everyone's comments are, and I think that is a good part of what we do as doctors, is we soothe others. So we're happy to serve in that purpose today. Does anyone else have any other soothing last words to offer our audience?
So let's say you go through this application cycle and you match into a program you didn't want to. For some people, it's family medicine. For others, it's internal medicine. For some people, it's psychiatry. For some people, it's neurology. Pick one. I don't care what it is. Pick a program. You match into either a program you don't like or a specialty you didn't really want to. It's not the end of the world. And you should approach it the same way you would have approached it had you been in the location or the program you wanted to. There are plenty of friends of mine that wanted emergency medicine. They'd applied to family and emergency. They matched into family. They didn't match into emergency medicine. But today, as attendings, they're practicing as emergency medicine physicians. They did a fellowship program and they're where they want to be. There are people who did the same thing. They wanted OB-GYN, but they didn't get into OB-GYN. However, today they don't do any family medicine. They do strictly OB-GYN. Same thing can be said for pediatrics. I'm a family medicine physician. I don't do clinic. I never liked clinic, but I'm a hospitalist. 7 on, 7 off. I love that schedule. It works for me. So there's always a path to being able to do what you would like to do or see yourself doing, irregardless of how you match.
I want to add to that. So I'm actually the complete opposite. So I always thought family, I want to see the whole gamut. I want to see the kids and the pregnant women and and the grandma. And, but I matched into internal medicine. I hate hospitals, absolutely hate them. However, I am very
Me
pleased.
too.
I'm very pleased with my training because I feel more than prepared to operate in the clinical setting. I'm actually very sought after because it is hard to find an internal medicine physician in the outpatient setting. I'm typically used for your high level complex patients, which I absolutely love. I love a challenge. And so as depressed as I was for the first year or two, I learned by the end of it that, this was actually where I was meant to be. And so the point there is you make it work. All right. I have 2 questions here and I'm not sure what it means. And I think probably this will be the last one, but it says, what do you think about signaling? And I don't know what that means, but I saw it in another question. Does anybody know what signaling means?
So that's part of the new ERAS application process. And so there is now the opportunity to signal places. And so you get a number of signals and it's like an extra way of like giving a wink to a program saying like, hi, I'm interested in you. I know we've
That's like online dating?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like a dating app.
yeah, it's basically that's what ERAS is these days. And so, I think that it's becoming more of a strategy of like what we've talked, like do your research, see what programs are IMG friendly, see if these programs take, grads, see if, these are the states where IMGs go the most, and then try to signal places that you think have those requirements or things that fit for you. It's very tricky. I think you get only 15 signals. And so you have to use them wisely. And I know that it's hard, but I think it's all about strategy of like what state you're applying to, and if they're IMG friendly. I think that if it's a program that hasn't had an IMG in 15 years, I wouldn't waste a signal or an opportunity for a program to open your application in one of those programs.
Or even $120 if that's where you're at with however much it costs to apply to each one. Do we have any other last words? We are running up towards our last.
I would say I just want to add one thing. And this is kind of, I guess, related to signals. I applied before this, but sending your emails to get past like the ERAS filter of like things, because like the program that I'm at right now, I only got an interview here because I sent an email. So like please like use your emails, like use other ways to like email the program director, APD, like program coordinator, like Dr. Obi said, but like sometimes it's not that they don't want you or they don't want your application, they just didn't see your application. And you need to remind them that you're there.
Absolutely. Let's see if there's one last one here. It says, when would you start emailing programs?
I think I started emailing people in like November, but people told me that I was late. I don't know if there's a right time to start emailing programs. I think I was like, I'm not getting as many interviews as I wanted to get at the time. So that's when I started sending out more emails.
I started about a month after the initial submission. I noticed a question that was in the email we got for this Zoom call. And there was a question about how early to apply, when to apply. You want to start off the races as early as possible. As soon as programs start downloading, you want your application ready to go for that initial filter. And if you have friends in locations, people reach out to them and say, hey, my name is so-and-so, I'm applying to your program. If they know you, they know you. But I reached out to people I didn't know. I just saw you went to Ross University. I just reached out to them like, hey, I'm applying to your program. Some people will promise you things and not submit your applications, but you never know. You never know. I've been able to help people match into different programs because I reached out to my friends that were in those programs like, hey, I have somebody that's applying to your program. Oh, sure. Send me their ERAS number. And that's it. That was it. They got an interview. And then once you get to the biggest thing is get your foot into the interview, then you sell yourself. That's how it works. Get your foot into the interview, then you sell yourself. So program coordinators, I can never say this enough. They really will make or break you because they are the gatekeeper for applications. And if somebody can walk your AAMC ID or ERAS ID number and say, hey, this is a name, this is their ID number, can you look at this application? It can make a difference between you, even people that have been automatically filtered out, it can bring them right back in. And like Dr. Umeh said, I sent in emails, 3 of my 10 interviews, no, I'm sorry, 4 out of my 10 interviews were from emails that I sent a month after ERAS opened up for programs to start downloading. I'm complete.
In terms of the program coordinators, so I had a situation, the program that I matched in, the program coordinator had me confused with another applicant who had been extremely, you know, just inappropriate in their emails and their communications the past year. So after a month or so, when I saw other people running through for their interviews and I asked her and she told me that, you know, that's why. And I pulled up my emails that I had sent and had to show it to her and I got an interview the next day. So don't underestimate the power of that program coordinator because they really are the person who's going to either put your application in a visible place or make sure it never becomes visible, purposefully or not purposefully. All right, so I think we're over at 9. Is that correct? Okay, thank you
That
all.
is correct. Dr. Lafleur, you are wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, you guys have been wonderful. The students have been so engaged. Students, please check in the chat. Several of the panelists have dropped their emails. Please feel free to stay in touch and definitely follow us on social media if you aren't already at Tour for Diversity. Thank you all so much. Have a great weekend.